or so hello, or something like that. But to actually know them, to know them from the perspective of the way people used to know each other, that when you baked something, you maybe took some of it next door. Or if you were about to bake something and you needed some sugar, you could just go next door and borrow a cup of sugar. I know when I lived not too far from here, when I lived down the street, I lived in a cul-de-sac, and we had that kind of neighborhood. We would talk to one another, and we would kind of all see each other, and there were times where we would talk about what we were cooking and say, well, make sure you send me some of that. And so I did have a neighbor. He was a single father with a teenage daughter, and he loved to make peach cobbler. So I said, well, next time you make peach cobbler, you make sure you send me one. And sure enough, one day my doorbell rang, and it was him, and he had a peach cobbler for me. I said, thank you so very much. I said, would you like some? He said, no, I got some more at home. You just eat that and enjoy it. And so my daughter and I, we ate and we enjoyed it. And then I thought about something my mama told me, which was never to return a dish empty. And so I cooked something for him. I cooked more on the savory side. I made him a shepherd's pie. And I sent that over to him, or I took it over to him, and he was so pleased to get it. He said, so what you want me to make you for next week? And so we just kind of had this thing going on where we would go back and forth, and then the neighbor on the other side, she said, well, how come I'm not in on it? But we just had a wonderful little community thing going there because we knew each other. There was one lady who sat in the house, I called her Big Mama, because that's who she reminded me of. But I called her Big Mama, and Big Mama, her job was to watch the cul-de-sac. So she would get up in the morning, she would get dressed and have her breakfast, she would see the kids off to school, and then she would post up in the front living room window. And when you came home in the afternoon, she would wave to you and you'd walk over, she would beckon you. And she would let you know there was a car came to your house about 11:10. It stayed there for 10 minutes. It was a white, this make and model. She said, I got the license tag if you need it. They got out, they rang the bell, they walked to the back. She could tell you everything that happened. And there were some people who said, oh my goodness, having nosy neighbors. I said, it's a wonderful thing. That is better than any camera, is better than any surveillance system that you could purchase, is to have a neighbor who will sit out there and watch your house. That's right. That's right. Because you don't realize how many people get home in the evening and found out that a moving van has pulled up to their house, moved all their furniture out, and the neighbors watched it, thinking to themselves, well, they didn't say anything about moving. Not realizing that the people are being robbed. That's right. But because they don't communicate with one another. You know, neighbors today has a whole different feel to it. It has a whole different vibe to it. And so here's this man, he's just trying to justify himself, saying, well, who is my neighbor, so that I know, do I only have to look out for the person that lives to the right of me or the left of me, or do I have to do more? And I think that Jesus teaches a very important lesson, a lesson that we can learn for. He says that here was this man who was going from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers, and they stripped him of his clothes, and they beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. In other words, there was a brother who got a beat down. I'm talking about a show-enough beat down. They took his Nikes, they took his jacket, they took everything, and left him there for dead. Now a priest just happened to be going down the same road. Now what's really interesting is that once in Jerusalem is the temple. And the fact that the priest was coming down the same road means that either he was leaving and coming from the temple, or he was going towards the temple. We don't know which direction he was going on the road, but we know here we have this religious person who happened happened to be going down the same road and he saw the man. And I don't know if it really makes any difference whether he was going to church or whether he was coming back from church. The fact was he saw somebody beat down on the road and he passed on the other side.
That's right.
He passed him. He didn't want to get involved. Because for him to get involved would cause him to be unclean. And if he was to become unclean, then he wouldn't be able to fulfill his position at the church. It's interesting because even today,
come on,
there are so many people who are so stuck on their titles and their position that they don't even have any feelings when it comes to the people.
That's right.
They're like, well, that's my parking spot, and I don't know why somebody is in my parking spot. And my question is, why is your parking spot the closest one to the door? It's just my feeling that the pastor, the pastor's wives, the deacons, the deaconesses, the musicians, none of them folk need to have parking spaces that are close to the door. That the most convenient parking spaces ought to be for the visitors.
That's right.
The most convenient parking spaces ought to be for those who have trouble and challenges being ambulatory.
That's right.
And so why does your position give you a place to where you don't even think about the needs of the people?
Well,
Let me not talk about this priest. Let me go to verse 32 so I can talk about this Levite. The Levite, now this isn't a man who comes from the Levitical tribe. This is a Levite who came from the tribe of Levi, and they were assistants to the priests or to the Levites. And he came down the road as well. So here you have a second higher up in the church who comes down. And when he came to the place and he saw this man, he passed on the other side. You know, some people will go out of their way.
that's right. Right.
So that they don't have to help anybody.
That's right.
Some people will make it a point not to see the needs of other people.
That's right.
Some people just don't want to get involved because the price or the cost is too high. When was the last time that you saw something? Be honest with yourself. You don't have to tell us when's the last time perhaps you were at the mall or at the store, at a restaurant or driving down the street and you saw something that kind of caught your eye because it didn't seem like it was right. You know, there have been times I've been in the parking lot and I've seen parents snatching at their children and cursing their children out. Or I've been driving down the street and I looked at somebody that looked like maybe they were abusing somebody. Or I've heard things and saw things that weren't quite right, and I had to make a decision whether or not I was going to get involved or if I was going to turn my head
That's right.
and go the other way. It's an interesting response when you look at folk who are cursing their children out.
Yes, it is.
Because when I see that, I have to, I don't say anything, but I have to get involved.
That's right.
Because what I do is I stop and I stare. I just kind of look at them. And I make sure they know I'm looking at them. And then they start, like, passively cursing me out. You know, I don't know what she thinks she's doing. I don't know who she thinks she is. I don't know what she's looking at. And whatnot. And that's all I'm waiting for them to say. I don't know what she's looking at, because then I get to say something. I was looking at you. Because it seemed like you were really having a difficult time. And that child had really gotten on your last nerve. And you know, it's amazing that when you say that, people will usually just kind of agree with you. These couple of folk I've talked to have. They're like, she's like, yeah, she has. Every time we get in there, they cut a fool and blah, blah. And they went on and I said, yeah, raising children is a challenge. Isn't it? Especially if you don't have any community to help you. Who helps you? See, now I'm use that as an opportunity to witness about being a part of a community that will help. But I can't just turn my head. I was going down Memorial Drive the other day and I saw a couple. They looked like they were maybe in their late teens, early 20s, and they were being physical with one another, but I couldn't tell if they were playing or if it was serious. And so I just slowed down. And I went past them, but I kept watching in the rear view mirror because I said, I don't know how to turn this car around, but I will if I have to. Because I can't go down the street and see somebody being abused in public and not say something. But I wonder how many of us see different things and we know it's wrong. And we just kind of turn our heads. And we're like these other religious folk and just don't want to get involved. I think that Jesus is really making a point here that it's not about religion. It's not about position. It's about a willingness to get involved. That when he looked, it was these two religious people who walked by. He said, but a Samaritan. Now it's interesting because I'm sure for this wise man, I'm sure for this educated man, this expert in the law, the priest and the Levite probably held pretty high position with him. He was probably pretty impressed by the Levite and the priest. But when it came to the Samaritan, see, nobody really liked the Samaritans. The Samaritans were half-breeds. They were considered traitors because while the Assyrians were in the land, there were those who mixed and mingled. You know, they were single and they mingled, and next thing you know, you got Samaritans. They were considered to be traitors. They worshipped other gods other than the God of Jacob and Abraham and Isaac and Moses and such. But it seems that this Samaritan was the only one out of the three who had a different response. And that's what I want to talk about. That when it comes to living your best life, when it comes to experience all that God has for you, that it requires you to not be so tied up into your own stuff that you don't see what's happening in the lives of other people. Amen. So I'm just going to call that first thing perceptive. That this Samaritan was perceptive to the needs of other folk. He had enough issues of his own because he was a Samaritan. Don't nobody like me. Everywhere I go, they talk. I can't help it because I'm a Samaritan. I'm a Samaritan because my mama was a Samaritan. I didn't ask to be a Samaritan. I just am a Samaritan. Okay, and I can't do anything about it. He had his own challenges in life. Yet when he went down the street, he saw somebody who was in need. That's right. And as a result of that, he stopped his inward and paid attention to what was happening to someone else. Did you know that there are some issues in this building right now that you may or may not be perceiving? Right. There are some needs in this room right now that you may hold the resources to addressing those needs. But the question is, are you so focused on you, yourself, and I that you can't pick up and perceive on the needs of others? Samaritan was perceptive. Not only was he perceptive, he was compassionate. Compassionate. Compassion is the willingness to share in somebody else's pain share. Passion is pain. To share in somebody else's pain, or to look and say, look, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm on a schedule. I need to get where I'm going. And I need to be there on time. I don't have time to get involved with what's going on in their life. I'm so thankful that this Samaritan did not have that outlook. Unfortunately for us, there are way too many CVS's and Walgreens on the corners where we can pick up a sympathy card and give it to somebody saying, I see you got a challenge, and I'm so sorry, here's a card, get over it. Because that's what so many of us do. We show sympathy and not empathy. We say, I see what you're going through, but I don't have time to get involved with that. But this Samaritan, he shared in this man's pain. And sharing in that pain caused him to stop what he was doing, to alter his plan, and to offer assistance, which takes me to number 3. Because when we look at verse number 34, it says he went to him. Unlike the religious folk who went around him. He went to him and he bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to an inn and took care of him. This man, this Samaritan, this reject, this traitor, this one who was thought of as less than, was also a selfless person. And he was willing to be inconvenienced. Are you willing for God to interrupt your life? What is your response when God interrupts your life? When he puts something right there in your pathway that you have a choice of going on and doing what you were doing, what you had planned to do, or stopping and being inconvenienced so that you can help someone else who is having trouble along the way. In his selflessness, this Samaritan man was willing to invest time and resources. I'm not talking about just 10 minutes worth of time. See, we feel like we're doing good if we stayed at the store and talked to somebody for 10 minutes. We feel like we're doing good if we went out of our way and it delayed us by 20 or 30 minutes. But this man, he just stopped right there on the road and he used the oil and the wine that he had on him. And why is anybody walking down the street with oil and wine? Well, typically that was carried when somebody knew that they were going to have to prepare a meal or something like that. Oil and wine were 2 of the basic necessities. And so he took out of his basic necessities to take care of this man. It said he bandaged his wounds, and I don't know if he was walking with bandages or if he had to tear his clothes. We know that the man was kind of clothesless because somebody had already ripped off his clothing. And so it's very possible that in him bandaging, he actually had to rip his own tunics to stop the bleeding. When was the last time you stopped on your way to somewhere to stop somebody else's bleeding? That you saw that they were losing life, that they were at the end of life, that their hope was gone, and you stopped and said, you know what, I know I got a plan and I know I got a timeline. However, I see a brother or a sister in need, and so let me pause to see what I can do and help their need. He invested his time and his resources. He put him up on his own denarius. When's the last time you let somebody get in your car? It's so funny. I had a friend who bought a car. It was a Lexus. Bought a really nice, brand new Lexus. So we were planning to go on a road trip. And so we said, well, it's 4 of us. Why don't we just ride in your car? You got a brand new Lexus. She said, oh no, y'all can't ride in my car. And we're like, what? I don't want to mess my car up. We're like, first of all, we are adult women in our 40s plus. And we're like, well, we won't eat in the car or anything. We're just trying to ride the way we're going. She said, nobody sat in the back seat of my car, and nobody's going to sit in the back seat of my car. And we're like, nobody's ever going to sit in the back seat of your car. She said, no. I said, so why you get a back seat? But do you know she never, ever, in all of the years that we went hang, she never let anybody ride in that car. We always had to pick her up. She had a resource, but she wasn't willing to share it with anybody. The last I heard, she's no longer able to drive. But you know, I just look and say, oh well. That we've got to be willing to invest our time and our resources. I keep saying time and resources, and I know that time is a resource. But I keep saying time and resources because I want us to see in verse 35, it starts out the next day. So again, the time that was invested here again was not 30 minutes. He sat with this man all night long. He held vigil with this person. He got him to the end, but then he stayed with him. In other words, he didn't say, here's a voucher. I hope you get some food. I hope you get your bill paid. I hope you get whatever, and go on your way. Juices be done. But he walked this journey with this man and stayed with him to make sure that he was at least through the critical time.
Yes.
Talk about inconvenience. I got to sleep in my own bed. I can't be staying out all night long. I can't drive at night. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that. What is needed from you is that you do what you don't normally do.
That's right. Well,
he looked at this man. He looked after this man. And then the next day, he took out 2 denarii. And if you do a little bit of research, you'll find out that 2 denarii is about the equivalent of 1 day's wages. He took out 2 denarii and he told the innkeeper, look, you just look after him, and when I return, if there's anything else that I owe you, I'll reimburse you for it. Y'all missed that one.
right.
Just do whatever you need for him and put it on my tab.
Right.
And when I come back, I'll take care of the tab. You're talking about a perfect scenario for being taken advantage of. I bet you won't do that with even your own children when you stay at the hotel, because if you know, you tell them just do whatever, they'll have room service coming up. They'll go to the movies and they'll select the movies you gotta pay for. They'll go down to the gift shop and buy the $25 flip-flops and the $30 float. When's the last time you left an open tab for a stranger? That most of us have never acted in the way that this Samaritan has acted. We've never responded to the needs of somebody else in the same lavish way that this Samaritan responded. Not too long ago, they supposedly found a sign over in the Middle East, an old historic sign that was for an inn. And it said that the cost for staying in the inn was about 1/32 of a denarii. 1/32 of a denarii. And so that for this Samaritan to have given 2 denarii, he basically paid in advance for 2 months worth of stay. or at least a month worth of stay plus whatever extras. Are you willing to invest time and resources for somebody that you might not even know?
Let's take I-20 West.
The third thing that I want to bring forth about this man being selfless, that he was willing to risk getting hurt. You know, love will do that to you. Love will position you in such a way that you are vulnerable and you may just get hurt. In other words, he said that you know, whatever he needs, I'll give it to you. And see, I don't even know if you're going to tell me the truth when I come back, but I'm willing to take that chance to ensure that this person gets taken care of. Are you willing to risk being hurt, to getting hurt? Is your thought process leaning more in the direction of what happens if I help? Or do you think more from the perspective of what will happen if I don't help? This Samaritan responded to the words that were spoken earlier by this expert. To love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your being. That's the worship piece. But the piece that follows is to love your neighbor as yourself. Are you willing to love that lavishly? Are you willing to show overwhelming generosity to somebody that you may never see again? Or are you only willing to do for the people who can do for you? Are you willing to love without limitation? Because you are loved without limitation. See, God took the limits off when it came to loving you.
Yes.
Because I know you and your great self, you being the you that you are. Truth of the matter is, you're really not that easy to love.
Well,
I know you think you all that. And I know you think you come with all kinds of extras and things that people want, but the bottom line is you really are not that easy to love. Yet God loves you in spite of who you are. That he pours out overwhelmingly generosity towards you. We call that grace. That he lavishes his love on you and keeps things from happening to you that ought to happen to you. We call that mercy. That he loves you without limitations.
thank you, Lord.
But we have a hard time loving our neighbors in that same way. To be honest with you, I think that sometimes we have a hard time loving ourselves that way.
Yes.
Then we get down to the end of this text, and Jesus once again flips the script. Now he's no longer telling the story, he's no longer giving the lesson, but he's looking at this wise man and he's saying and asks him, so which of these do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robber? Well, who was the neighbor? Because wasn't that the question? But Jesus is actually showing him, you're asking the wrong question, because we don't know who the neighbor was as far as proximity was concerned, because we just know that they were on the road. But what we do know is that they were all on the road, and that there was someone who was in need. So maybe the question wasn't really who was neighbor, but who can I be neighbor to? address is. If they're close to me and they're in need and there's something I can do to make a difference, maybe that's what I need to be doing at this point. Perhaps Jesus was trying to teach this man that you're asking the wrong question because you want to know who qualifies as neighbor. Who qualifies as a neighbor, therefore who qualifies to be loved. And the question should be, how can I love without qualifying? Because see, that's what the man wanted to know. Who qualifies to be loved? And Jesus' response is, no. What you ought to be asking is, who can you love without qualifications? Because see, the qualification of priest, the qualification of Levite, those qualifications didn't help out at all. Forget the question of who qualifies for you to love them and demonstrate that love knows no qualifications. Just love those who are in need of love. That's what Jesus did. When he came here to earth, we didn't deserve it. We weren't qualified for it. But he came anyway. And he poured out on us so greatly that he actually poured out his life for us. Yes. When he died on the cross. That his love for us was so great that he knew there was no way we would ever be able to pay him back for what he did. But he did it for us anyway. I submit to you that if you want to begin living your best life, begin living the life that fellowships and serves others, begin living the life that allows you to use what you have. I'm pretty sure this Samaritan, by spending the night in this inn, was very late. I'm sure when he woke up this morning, he didn't say, well, let me plan to be detained for like 8 hours. I'm sure that this interruption in his life was just that. It was an interruption, but he welcomed it because he knew that it was an opportunity for him to demonstrate a love that knows no qualifications. Brothers and sisters, my prayer is that you too will live your best life, that you will use your time and your resources to lavish love without limit on all that you need, for they are your neighbors. Amen.
Amen. Amen.